Julie, I'll go ahead and start with our intro. If you
Yeah,
want to watch the waiting room, and then we can swap back.
I will.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we've got, 24 people already. Okay. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first session of the 2021 speaker series presented by Cornell Cooperative Extension of Steuben. I'm Olivia Dates, Senior Nutritionist at Cornell Cooperative Extension of Steuben, and I'm going to provide a brief introduction of tonight's program and our presenter. Each year, Cornell Cooperative Extension of Steuben County offers speakers based on the various programs we offer. Rooted in every county of the state, Cornell Cooperative Extension, or CCE as we like to call it, translates Cornell University's world-class research into practical, real-world knowledge that helps New York State residents, businesses, and communities thrive. Here in Steuben County, we offer research-based information on agriculture, nutrition, youth development, and finance. You can check out all of our resources at putknowledgetowork.org. Tonight, we're going to cover a nutrition and health topic that is near and dear to all of us right now, losing those quarantine 15 pounds. Our presenter this evening is Julie Walenta. Julie works at Cornell Cooperative Extension of Steuben County as a regional environmental nutritionist. She is a local Bath resident and joined CCE from Guthrie HealthWorks Wellness and Fitness Center, where she was a clinical dietitian. Julie holds a BS in dietetics from the University of Delaware and a master's degree in public health nutrition from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. With that, I'll pass it over to Julie to get started.
Well, thank you so much, Olivia. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to see if I can't go back over here and share my screen with you. And we'll get started. Oh, it wants to Zoom, Olivia. Why is that? More.
It looks okay on our screen.
Really? It's all zoomed in on mine.
It's taken up like 3/4 of the page, and then there's just a column of us participants, but we definitely can see the slide.
Yeah, it's cutting off like the whole side. So give me a minute.
Oh, I see. I see it.
Yeah,
Is.
Out.
Zoomed in for mine.
Yeah, you're right. It is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm gonna stop the share and I'm gonna just fix it and I'm gonna take care of it. Because there's more than one way to do things here. There we go. Okay, and now we'll try it again. I always think to myself, when people do these talks, how do they have that many problems with technology? And of course, it happens. Okay, let's try it again. All right, that looks better. Okay, so just to let you guys know, a couple things. We're gonna keep everybody muted. If you need to ask a question, the best way to probably do it, since we have a large group, is type it in the chat box. If you can't do that, it's okay. If you need to ask something or something comes up right then, if it's something that can wait, well, there'll be time at the end and I can answer your questions then. So and Olivia, if you see something in the chat that I definitely need to know right at that instant, just let me know.
Okay, sure. Yep, and we'll keep track of anything that could wait till the end too.
Perfect. Okay. So here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a few things. We're going to learn the causes of quarantine weight gain. It might not be what you think, so hopefully I'll give you some new ideas about it. We're also going to discover the tools that are going to help you counter the quarantine weight gain. We're going to explore some ways to manage stress and uncomfortable feelings that are often the underlying cause of some of the weight gain. And we're also going to help you develop a plan of preventive self-care. Okay, so the first thing I want to tell you guys, I've been monitoring this situation since the whole quarantine began. And initially, you know, I started thinking about it as a dietitian. I know people were talking about gaining weight during quarantine, and I kept thinking about, you know, what's going on and how to help people. So I'm so glad that I could speak with you guys tonight. But two posts came up on my Facebook page and at different times. And I just wanted to throw them out there to let you kind of see, you know, the different sides of things that are going on right now. One of my friends posted this, the post on the left, and she said, "Time to lose the quarantine 15," with a very unhappy looking face, and the hashtag torture, with a picture of a fad diet book in the picture. And another one of my friends posted under the hashtag body positivity, and she said, or she reposted actually, "I am not looking forward to all the lose that quarantine weight New Year's blankety blank that's about to drop. So here's a reminder, your body has been processing so much stress and trauma that if you are alive and healthy, you are good. Your body is good as it is, you are good." So my first thing I want to make sure everybody knows is that you don't have to lose weight right now. Losing weight is stressful to the body, and you don't have to tackle it right now. My hope tonight is to give you an idea of why it happens, and then some really concrete tips that help you manage it, but don't put your body or your mind or your emotions in a more stressful state than they already are. Okay, so what causes quarantine weight gain? Well, there are actually some changes, there are actually some changes in the body and the mind that result from social distancing and virtual living. So we'll talk about that. Of course, moving less and sitting more has an effect, and so does eating when you're not hungry. So we're going to dive into each one of these. This first one, see if I can't get my other screen out of the way here. Changes in the body and the mind. So there was a recent study that actually found that loneliness and isolation cause the same types of changes in the brain as hunger. So we know that when people are hungry, they're actually having some changes in dopamine in the brain. And what will actually happen is when they get really hungry, they'll eat to bring those levels up. They'll eat to bring the level of serotonin up to feel better. And so the research was actually looking at the quarantine, looking at the isolation, the social distancing, and seeing how that change in the brain is so similar that it actually makes sense that if we're in this state of isolation, that we're going to crave more food because it's the actual same type of change as hunger. And what's interesting also is that connecting virtually, we were talking about that right before we started, connecting virtually doesn't have the same effect as when you connect in person. There's just something different about it. And we actually find that when we're online, we're overstimulated cognitively. We're thinking, and we're understimulated physically, socially, and emotionally. So there's three things there that get off kilter. And it's easy when those things go to have kind of some of these other daily habits shift as well. We're also moving less and sitting more. And that's really common. I remember at the very beginning, one of my friends, she just said, you know, I can't go to the gym. So she was just home and she was just sitting. She went from movement kind of, you know, all or nothing. And that's really common with the way that humans just do things. We tend to go for that all or nothing approach, not just with exercise, but with eating too. We're going to talk about all or nothing thinking here in a second. So the other thing that happened was a lot of gyms closed. At the time I was working at HealthWorks Wellness and Fitness Center, and we had to close. So, you know, we had the shift with what we could or couldn't do. But the interesting thing too is that the majority of calories we burn each day is not through going to a gym. It's through what we do each and every day, the movement that we have. So these little things that add up over time. And so again, kind of looking at that all or nothing kind of approach really changed, you know, our calorie burn. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that inactivity causes changes at the cellular level that actually increase hunger and fat storage. So when we're sitting more, our cells are using fuel differently. And so it's making it harder to resist some of those treats that might be around. And also it's making it easier to store body fat and store calories, store excess calories. Oh, look at my GIF worked. Fantastic. I hope you guys like the Golden Girls. I'm a huge fan. All right, so the last part here is that people are eating when they're not hungry. And a lot of this is tied in to stress and depression and anxiety. We have much higher levels right now of stress, depression, and anxiety during the pandemic. They've studied this. They see these rates going up. And what's interesting about that is that anxiety is felt in the stomach. And sometimes we mistaken it for hunger. That happens a lot more than you'd realize. So if I'm feeling anxious, I might be eating to calm that anxiety. We're also, a lot of times people tell me, I'm just bored. I'm at home, I don't know what to do, I'm bored, and they're off their regular schedules. If you're working at home or if you're just, kind of not able to do the normal things, go out, then that loss of schedule seems to affect people quite a bit. And when they're at home, there's more food around and more availability of food. And so it's easier to get up and go grab something like cheesecake. All right, so how do you counter it? So now we kind of know, all right, there's some things we knew already, but now what do I do about it? Well, there's 8 things I came up with that can help you counter that quarantine weight gain. And one is we're going to tackle that all or nothing thinking. That's a really key thing. We're going to talk about movement, moving more, setting an eating schedule, restructuring the environment, portioning your food, doing nothing else while eating, finding some alternative activities, and then connecting. So we'll dive into each one of these. First, all or nothing thinking. So this is a term I've used throughout all of my career, over 20 years. I discovered it when I was first working as a registered dietitian, that people tend to think in terms of black or white, good or bad, all or nothing. Either I'm on the diet or I'm off the diet. I put a couple quotes in there. If I can't do my normal exercise routine, I might as well not do anything. Or if I have the burger, I may as well have the fries. So the way the mind works, and this is just normal human behavior, it just tends to shift like that. If you can't get 100, if you can't score 100%, you're giving yourself a 0. So what I always encourage people to think about is, well, if you have kids and your kid came home and they got a 80 or 90 on a test, you probably wouldn't be like, wow, you really blew it. You'd probably be like, hey, you did great. That's really wonderful. So start to take a step back when you find yourself in that mindset and actually score yourself. If we're doing it with nutrition, there's a saying in nutrition, be a B student. So that if you can do what you need to do at least 80% of the time, then you're fine, you're okay. And so if you're eating, I did the math earlier because I was thinking, what is the math? If you're eating 3 times a day, 7 days a week, that's 21 opportunities to eat healthy. And the math came out that if I ate healthy at least about 16, 17 times that week, I'm good. Meaning that if I have a few days, where I have a splurge here or there, or even if one day I have a holiday or I have an event or I just don't feel like it, I'm still okay. It's when we get into that, it has to be one or the other, that it really gets us into trouble. And that really comes back to thinking in terms of, instead of thinking in black and white, I say, think of shades of gray. So I put up a picture, and this is how I always reminded people. When people would come to see me, I'd say, you remember that movie that came out, Shades of Gray? And everybody always remembered the movie. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to think in terms of all those different shades of gray between the black and white. And that's a really easy way to remember it. And fun too. All right, because every single presentation needs more than one Golden Girls gift. So move more. An object at rest tends to stay at rest. And so that's physics, but that's the way the human body works too. We are wired, and this goes back to caveman times, we are wired to actually conserve energy. So it's inherent in our genes that if we have the opportunity to sit and rest, that's what we're going to do. So we have to move ourselves out of that state. We have to start to get the ball rolling. So it's not that I have to, again, it's not all or nothing. I'm not going from sitting to going out and walking 5 miles. That's too much. We're going to take the little baby steps and work our way up. And usually just getting kind of some sort of stimulation during the day is going to help to motivate. So this is funny, but things like spicy food, loud music, an exciting TV show, it just kind of gets the blood pumping. And then once we have that kind of, that stimulus, then we can start to move and improve from there. So another thing people don't realize is, that when we think about action and motivation, there's actually no such thing as just motivating yourself. People always say, I'm going to get motivated. Motivation doesn't come from nowhere. It actually is generated from small actions. So if you do little things like, maybe you sign up for a class like this one, or maybe you put on your exercise clothes. Even if you don't go out, you just have them on and it makes you start thinking about it. Or you clean off the treadmill or whatever exercise equipment, and it starts to get you going. Any amount counts as well. So the thing about movement, they used to think you had to do a certain amount for it to count. That's not true. Any amount counts, even a minute, 2 minutes, whatever you got. It's going to make a difference. I find that setting a timer to move is really, really helpful. I actually wear like a little step tracker, and it buzzes every hour. And that's really helpful because otherwise I had no idea how little I was moving when I was sitting at home. So that tends to help people a lot, just that reminder. And you can do that if you don't have a step tracker. You can set an alarm on your phone, or even just an old school alarm. One of my clients once, she had a timer. She'd set it for 60 minutes. It'd go off in 60 minutes. When it would go off, she'd reset it the next 60 minutes, and she just kept going like that. So she just always had that reminder. There's a goal too. So if you track, one of the things I always suggest is tracking steps. Tracking steps is really helpful. And that's what I was just talking about with my step tracker. There's a goal of 10,000 steps per day. That's a lot of steps. That actually is about 5 miles. And if you're not doing a lot of activity, like most Americans average about 4,000 steps a day. Sometimes less. I was less when I first started tracking. So if you're there, you're not going to jump up to 10,000. So I always recommend looking at the average amount of steps that you're taking. Just monitor yourself for a week, look at your average, and then start to build from there. Try to add on 10 to 100 steps a day, or try to achieve kind of your average every single day. That way you're not overdoing it, and work up to the 10,000 gradually. All right. Next, set an eating schedule. I put eating in parentheses because, to be honest with you, it's set a schedule, because most people are way off schedule when they're not having to go to work or do their normal routine. So try to have consistent sleep times. When you go to bed, when you wake up. Brush your teeth and shower. I was listening to, it was one of Cornell's wonderful presentations, and there was a psychologist, and she said, people just need to put on clothes and shower. It's simple things. And I'm laughing only because I was just talking to my best friend, and she was saying, I don't usually change out my pajamas during the day. I usually work from home like that. So it's actually very common to do that. But the more we're regular about things, the better. Eat meals at regular times. And if you're going to snack, schedule those times too. Have a schedule. Your body loves consistency. I have said this 100 million times during the course of my career, but it's true. Your body absolutely loves consistency. And this is especially true when so many other things are changing. There are tons of things changing for us right now, and that have changed. And when we're having that kind of movement going on around us, it's good to have something that's stable and solid and consistent. And I also just wanted to point out, I love the quarantine meal schedule that I found, the Twitter post. I do not mean this kind of a schedule, so just FYI. All right. The next thing we're gonna do, all right, we're gonna restructure the environment. So don't discount this one. I've given a lot of talks over the years, and this is one of the most powerful things that you can do to help yourself eat healthier. People kind of, oh yeah, sure, whatever. They kind of blow it off when I say it, but there's research to support this. And the research comes from Cornell. I'm not intentionally choosing Cornell research, but it's fantastic research. And what we find is that your environment is stronger than your willpower. And you're 5 times more likely to eat the first thing you see when you open the fridge or cupboard. So if you open your cupboard and you have Oreos sitting there, you're gonna grab the Oreos. If you have some nuts and dried fruit, you're probably gonna grab that. If you open the fridge and you have leftover cake, I don't know, I'm just thinking, you're gonna grab that. If you have some vegetables cut up, you're going to grab that. There was actually part of the research that showed that when people took vegetables out of their vegetable jars and then washed them and cut them up and put them at eye level where they could see them in the fridge, they ate 230% more vegetables, which is fantastic. It's phenomenal. There was one of my clients who came to see me, and he said, well, I'm having this problem. I want to eat more vegetables, but I'm really struggling to eat more vegetables. And I said, well, let's kind of run through this. I said, do you like vegetables? And he said, yeah, I like them. They're great. I said, do you have them at home? He said, yeah, I got them in my freezer, and they're those steamable bags, so they're easy to prepare. I said, well, that's fantastic. You like them. You have them at home. They're easy to prepare. I said, what else do you have in the freezer? And he said, well, I've got some ice cream. He had 3 half gallons of ice cream, boom, 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 lined up first thing in the freezer. He'd have to go beyond that ice cream and back behind it to grab the vegetables and prepare them. And it just wasn't going to happen because of how he had the environment structured. So go ahead and reorganize your cupboards and fridge and put the healthy foods in front. Don't leave treats on counters. Opt for opaque containers. That was another part of the research. Oh, guess what? If I have a clear container and I've got cookies in it, I'm going to eat more than if it's an opaque, solid container where I don't see them. Or if I move them out of my line of sight, if I put it in a cupboard or something like that, I'm going to eat even less. Out of sight, out of mind. That is very true. Also, they said use smaller plates and bowls. Taller glasses. This is a way to trick yourself into eating less because it just makes your mind, again, it's just a visual thing, think that you're having more. One of the funny things about this is that when people are given smaller amounts on smaller plates and they're asked to estimate their satisfaction level, they say, I'm satisfied. It's good. I'm satisfied. And then you give them like a larger portion and on a larger plate, and they rate their satisfaction level exactly the same. It's not that, their level of satisfaction in the body's really changing. It's just the expectation. This is what I've got. This is the norm. This is what I'm good with. People will just, again, it goes back to our genes. We're used to eating what's in front of us, which is why you also want to put away the leftovers before eating, because if it's out, you're going to keep kind of picking at it and grabbing things. One thing that I skipped over, and I want to point out, only buy food at the grocery store that you want to eat. Only buy food that you want to eat. If you are trying not to eat potato chips and you buy potato chips and you get them home, you're going to eat potato chips. So making sure that what you are wanting to feed your body is what you actually are bringing home. And so make sure when you go to the store, things like make a list and don't go hungry. Those are 2 big things, because otherwise you're going to end up with all the stuff that you hadn't planned. And just to let you know, all this research that I'm talking about, it's the opposite that they apply at places like grocery stores. They put things in grocery stores that are tempting, that are at eye level, that are on the end caps, And that's really where all this kind of research comes out of, using kind of the opposite. Okay, so next one, I love this one, eating portioned food. So I've got a picture there of Reese's peanut butter cups. And they're the minis, and they're unwrapped. And many, many years ago, I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal, and it was from Hershey's. And they were saying how they did research, and they found that it was really tedious for people to have to unwrap a peanut butter cup. And they said that in order to make things easier for people, they were going to now offer peanut butter cups unwrapped, which would be so helpful, kind of expedite the process of eating. So think about this. They're finding that having something wrapped slows down your eating. And so they're doing the opposite. They're unwrapping it for you to help speed up and increase your eating, because their goal is to sell product. So what you want to make sure you do is measure a portion of food. If you're going to go and eat something, let's say I'm at home, I'm bored, I go to the cupboards, I see, my potato chips that I got the other day at the grocery store. Measure it into a bowl, measure it onto a plate, put the bag or whatever away, and then take that food and sit down at the table and enjoy the food. And again, this is another one of those things where people kind of go, oh, I don't know about this one, but this works because anytime we have a stopping point, if I can get something pre-wrapped, or if I can portion it into like a baggie, like snacks into baggies, or get single serving containers like ice cream bars instead of the half-gallon ice cream. Even if I eat 2 ice cream bars, it's still going to be less than if I got the half-gallon and I scooped it out myself. The research shows it, and it's just true because we have a stopping point. Our brain registers, oh, you've had one. And then even that little split second where we have to stop and pause is enough to change our minds into having more. And sometimes, we have one and we go, oh, that was really good. Let me, now that kind of took the edge off. Let me go do something else. And then maybe we even forget that we're, craving something because we've distracted ourselves with something else. All right, and this goes back to what I was just saying about take the food in, sit down, do nothing else while eating. People who eat distracted eat twice as much and feel less satisfied. They eat twice as much. So what do I mean by distraction? Well, it could be watching TV. It could be you looking at your phone. It could be reading. Anything that takes you away from the moment and the appreciation of that food and the experience of eating that food is going to increase the likelihood that you're going to eat more because you're not tuned into the body signals. In fact, there's a term I often use called eating amnesia. You take that bag of chips and you go into the sofa and you sit there and you eat while you're watching TV, and all of a sudden you look down and you say, where did my bag of chips go? Who ate that bag of chips? It couldn't have been me. I don't remember doing it. But it happens all the time because we're not tuned in. We're not tuned into the experience, and we're not using all of our senses. And we do. When we eat, we use all of our senses, every single one. And if we take one away, the experience is diminished. And if you're not sure, if you've ever had a cold where you couldn't taste anything, or God forbid COVID, and you can't taste or smell anything, the likelihood that you're going to enjoy what you're eating is not very high. And this is actually called mindful eating. We're going to touch on it later a little bit more. Mindfully just means that I'm being fully present in the moment. So we'll look at how to do that in a little bit. And there was a wonderful saying I heard a long time ago that said, give your food all the attention it deserves. That so many people say, oh, I love food. Well, if you love something, then you are completely focused on it. You're completely interested in it. So give it all the attention it deserves when you're eating, when you're doing it. All right. So now we have an idea of what to do with our food. We want to find some alternative activities to eating. So if you're home and you say, I'm bored, most likely it's not that you don't have something in the back of your brain to do. It's just that you don't have the thing that sounds interesting to you right in that moment. So one thing that you can do is just brainstorm and make a list. Actually write them down, because if you get to the time and place where you're, feeling like eating, maybe you're bored or you're feeling stressed that day and you want to grab the Oreos out of the cupboard, and you're thinking, well, what else is there, to do? Well, you can pull out the list. It's hard to come up with what you're going to do right then in that moment if you don't have it written down, because we're very much creatures of kind of in the present, in the moment, like, satisfaction, gratification in the moment. That's what I wanted to say. So make a list and vary the list so that if you have different kind of things on the list, it can match up a little bit better to maybe what you're feeling. If you're bored, maybe you want to do something exciting. If you're feeling stressed, maybe you want something else. If you're feeling lonely, maybe something else. So that way you have a variety of things to pick and choose. There are things that I love to do, but like for instance, I like to do some different crafts and things. But if I'm feeling bored, I might not want to just sit, especially if I'm sitting. So, I might want to vary it a little bit. You could also try making a vision board. I don't know if any of you have ever made a vision board, but a vision board is nice because you put... Oh, hold on one second. I'm going to mute somebody if I can. Did you get it, Olivia? Okay. All right. So when we're doing the vision board, it's actually a way to kind of lay everything out. You put pictures and you put phrases. This is kind of a picture of one that I found online, and you post that somewhere so it's a constant reminder. And that's just fun, fun. And it's always nice to kind of have it there and looking at it. Also, you can, for motivation, you could set a daily intention or goal. So I'm getting a little bit of feedback, guys. If you guys could just make sure you're muted, that'd be great. So setting a daily intention or goal is really nice because it keeps you on track. And this is one thing that we do with kids, actually. That was one of the things that, since I started working at Cooperative Extension, we've used as daily intentions or goals. Just kind of give them a focal point. So if you've got your list or you got your vision board or whatever it is, you can look at it and go, oh, today I'm going to embrace, here on this vision board it says giving back. Okay, I'm going to do this. Or you've got a book you want to read, or you've got a task you want to do. It gives you different ways of kind of doing things. Okay, and the last thing is connection. So this is something that we're all missing, connection. And in order to connect, what I suggest is that you put your phone down and you disconnect from social media, and maybe even take a news fast. Like, really, just step out of it. It's possible, it's doable, it's okay if you do. The world won't fall apart if you're not, knowing what everyone else or what's going on. It'll be fine. If there's something really big, you're gonna hear about it. Something really big happens in the world, you disconnect for a day, chances are someone's gonna let you know you missed something. And it helps because when we're not consuming all of that information, then we can really actually have a little bit more introspection, a little bit more. I was talking earlier before everyone got on, we were talking about silence. Silence is a wonderful thing because it helps you to start to tune in with what's going on inside. And also spending time in person with the people that you can be in person with. So if there are other people in your household, be there with them and be fully present with those around you. Fully present, meaning that if you're there with them and you guys are having dinner, that you're not on the phone, or that you're not distracted by something else, or kind of half paying attention, or even practice active listening. So if you're talking, with somebody, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this, sometimes, there's an exchange of information when you have a conversation, and you'll be sharing and then you'll stop, and then the other person will share. And sometimes what happens is you start to share and the other person starts to speak and you can't get a word in. So active listening is, again, a little silence, full attention, letting that person fully express themselves, and then sharing, your thoughts and feelings. And doing that is actually, again, it's just a practice that we use to really help improve that connection to people. Okay, so now what do we do? We've done all these things. We're doing all this stuff to counter the quarantine weight gain, but what if something uncomfortable, what if an uncomfortable feeling hits and I really want to eat? So I wanted to give you kind of a emergency kit of ideas of things to do. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to use some non-food distractions to soothe yourself. So non-food distractions and soothing yourself means that you're helping yourself feel better in that moment right then. So you could do things like spend time with a pet. You could get out in nature. You could do some arts and crafts or coloring. Adult coloring books are huge right now, very popular. You could take some time to read, watch TV. Sometimes it's okay to binge watch Netflix. It's fine, because if it's soothing yourself, that's all right. We'll talk about some other aspect of this in a little bit. Exercise is another way that sometimes people do. Cleaning. I had one friend, she loved to clean. That is not going to soothe me, but if that soothes you, then fantastic. Music is a nice way to do it. I had tons of clients who did things like puzzles and word games. And then the last thing is, asking for support. So it's often common that people will think, well, they should know, I hear this all the time. They should know how I'm feeling. My husband should know, my wife should know, people should know, and they should know that I'm struggling. People don't know. What happens is that every single person is really engrossed in what's going on with themselves. And so unless you tell them, oftentimes they just don't get it. They just don't get it. Okay. There we go. And also, if uncomfortable feelings arise, you can try just shifting to a healthier choice. So let's say I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling stressed. I don't know what's going on, with the world, and I want to eat something. I can just swap it out for something a little healthier. So I'm still giving myself a treat, but it's maybe just a little bit healthier. I give you some examples here. So if I'm craving the potato chips, I might go for air pop popcorn, or if I'm craving ice cream, I might go for the fruit smoothie, or even, like I said, like an ice cream bar where you just have, you can limit yourself then. And instead of cake, I might grab some pudding. If it's chocolate, something like that might work. Down there I put Cheerios in place of Fruity Pebbles. I put that because I was shocked at how many adults eat Fruity Pebbles. You'd be amazed at how many. So that seemed to be like one of those odd comfort foods that I never realized. So we can maybe make a shift there too. So you can choose something healthier, but if you say, well, geez, that's not gonna cut it. I really want what I want, and that's the only thing that's gonna make me feel better, then eat what you want, but do it mindfully. So I mentioned this before. If the only thing that's going to satisfy you is what you're craving, then don't substitute, but take what it is that you want and portion it just like we said. Put it in a plate, put it in a bowl, take that plate or bowl down to the table, sit down without distractions. And when you sit down with the food, take a look at that food and maybe, have a moment of thanks. Take a moment to really appreciate it. Think about where it came from, maybe the farmers and all the different places all the things that had to go into bringing it to you. And then start to use all your senses to enjoy the food. You can smell the food. You can look at it like it's the first time you've ever seen it. I've never seen this before, admiring it. You can chew it slowly, eating slowly, enjoying each bite, even holding it in your mouth, not chewing, moving it around, starting to see, oh, this is where I experienced this flavor, or maybe noticing different flavors that you hadn't before, because we usually eat so fast. You can listen to hear if it makes any noise. If you can eat with your hands, it's fantastic, because that's another way that we experience the food. And then, take a moment to look inward and ask yourself, how are you experiencing that food? When we are eating, sometimes we miss the subtle signals that the body gives us. And we might notice things like, oh, well, as soon, I'm about to eat, and maybe my mouth is salivating because I'm excited. Maybe I feel excited because I'm looking forward to eating that food. Notice how it feels as you swallow it. Notice that, after you swallow it, it's a part of you. Notice how the body feels, where you're feeling fullness. That's a common one that sometimes we miss altogether. We expect it to feel one way and it feels another. So for instance, most people think fullness is just in the stomach. But it might be something completely different. It might feel like a level of satisfaction, or it might feel like there's something I coined a term called the sigh of satisfaction. I'm eating, and then, and that's a sign, that you're getting satisfied. So mindful eating, very helpful if we are going to indulge. And if you're feeling brave and strong, then go ahead and just tackle your feelings head on. Figure out what you're really feeling, because the feeling isn't going to go away. It's going to be there. And if it's there and I eat or I distract myself, it's still going to be there later on. So if I figure out what I'm really dealing with, then I can tackle it, I can work through it, and there's different ways to do that. If you want to talk to a close friend or a loved one, somebody who is supportive and also going to help you move through the feeling. Meaning, if you talk to your friend and they say, oh, that's horrible, I have that experience too, I feel so lousy, the world is horrible right now, blah, blah, blah. They're not the person to talk to, because they're not going to help you move through it. But if you talk to another friend and they say, oh, I completely understand, that must be really difficult. What do you think would make you feel better right now in this moment? Then that can be super helpful. You can journal also. Journaling really helps us get those feelings and thoughts out. You can meditate. I'm a huge advocate of meditation. There's so many different ways to meditate. Meditation isn't, sitting cross-legged on the floor. It's really just taking a moment to center yourself and to quiet the mind a little bit. It doesn't stop thinking, but to move your awareness inward so that you can start to see what's really going on. That helps enormously. And if you notice yourself in that moment, like where I'm grabbing the chips, then that's perfect, because that's a sign that it's time right then and there to investigate and see what's going on. So use those times when you're, trying to distract as the time to really learn the most about yourself. They're great opportunities. If you feel like it becomes too difficult, if you feel like, oh, this is just too much for me to deal with, then go ahead and make sure you seek out a counselor or a therapist or even clergy, somebody to talk to that can really help you manage what's going on. Because there's a lot going on, and that is very, very important right now. Right, always, not just right now, always. Okay. I was just on a call, and I do so many of them, but somebody said, that so many times we're thinking about, I guess it was just the other day, that we think about like a broken bone or some sort of injury that we can see. And that when we talk about mental health, even though we can't see it, doesn't make it any less valid than something that we possibly, that we could, some medical issue that we could. So we treat it the same way, and that's important. Okay. All right, we've got all these different pieces in place. Now, we're going to do a little preventive self-care. And this is where we get into the diet. So if you thought you're going to come to this talk and I'm just going to give you a diet, we can't do that. I can't do it. But now's the time we're going to talk a little bit about healthy eating, physical activity, managing stress, and getting enough sleep. These are all really key. In fact, I was just looking at some research about lifestyle medicine and how important these are and how underused these are in helping us improve our health and well-being. Okay, so what's the difference between self-care and self-soothing? Because earlier I said soothe yourself. And those were things, like I said, you could binge watch Netflix. Well, self-soothing is that comfort that you provide yourself when you're feeling unhappy, when you're feeling distressed, and it makes you feel better right then in that moment. Self-care is a little different because it's actually helping you to heal, to grow, to cope, to really move forward as an individual, and really taking that active role in preserving your health and well-being. So they're two separate things. So I often hear people talk about, doing self-care. That's great, but self-soothing is important too. And so one is used for one thing and one is used for another. So for food, for a balanced diet. So when I say diet, I don't mean, at the beginning you saw that book, that fad diet book. I don't mean that kind of diet. A dietitian, when we speak about diet, we mean what you normally eat and drink, your pattern of eating. And it's going to look different for each and every person, which is why I don't give a diet, because everybody is a unique individual. And for every single person on this call, there's a different diet that's right for you. But in general, I can give you some key things. One is that 3 meals a day is usually a must. Just because of the way our bodies work, it's helpful to have food at regular intervals. So don't skip meals. Skipping meals will stress your body out. If you're stressed out from skipping a meal, if you're stressed out from watching the news, if you're stressed out from sitting all day and being inactive, all of that stress filters down into the same place. It doesn't matter where the stress arises from. So 3 meals a day. You're going to have a lot of fruits and vegetables with your healthy, balanced meal plan. Fruits and vegetables are really important because we find that when people consume them more, they have reduced rates of disease, but also they're low calorie. So when we eat them, we tend to eat less of the other stuff. They're very balancing, so that, balance. When I say balancing, meaning when people eat them, they tend to have less cravings. When people eat them, they tend to, their mood feels a little bit better. So it affects us in a lot of different ways. Whole grains are really key. So, looking at choosing whole grains in place of refined carbohydrates. I was just reading the new dietary guidelines for Americans that came out, and only 2% of the population meet the recommendation for whole grains. Only 2%. So whole grains, we'll talk about that in a second, but that's so key for a lot of different reasons. A nice balanced meal plan will have a variety of foods from each of the food groups. It's going to have moderate portion sizes, so we don't have to go crazy with this. Moderate portion sizes, use the smaller plates and bowls. Don't look at, again, if your plate is like this, don't go down to this. You're going to feel it. You go from here to here. And if that feels comfortable, you go to here. Little by little, we find that if we cut the amount that we eat by, just slightly, even just 5-10%, then the body doesn't notice it again, kind of keeping it out of that stress zone. And then reducing the amount of foods that you consume that are high in salt, sugar, and saturated fat. So basically, what are we talking about? Processed foods. And by processed food, I mean the junk foods. Things like that are going to add a lot of excess calories, a lot of excess fats, sugars, things that affect the body negatively. I also like to know that 60 to 70% of the immune system is in the GI tract. So even though there's not a food that boosts the immune system, if you're eating a lot of processed food, if you're eating a lot of junk foods, if you're not getting enough dietary fiber, which is going to be found in things like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, then your GI tract isn't going to be at its optimal functioning, at its optimal level, and that's going to impact your immune system. It's also going to affect the level of serotonin that's produced. So serotonin is the feel-good hormone, and about 90 to 95% of your serotonin is made in your GI tract as well. So looking at diet maybe from a different perspective than just weight loss as well. Okay, so let's look at this plate. We use this plate a lot. You've probably seen it before. This is one of my favorite pictures that we have. And it's got a nice little division of half the plate's fruits and vegetables, a quarter of the plate filled with some protein, and a quarter of the plate filled with some whole grains or other fiber-rich carbohydrates. So when we talk about fruits and vegetables, they say half the plate, eat half the plate with fruits and vegetables. I gotta be honest with you, that is not easy. So going back to our all or nothing thinking, if I can't do half the plate, does that mean that I just ditch the fruits and vegetables? Absolutely not. It means that I do what I can, that even lettuce and tomato on a sandwich is gonna count as a vegetable serving. Or, you know, even if, like, let's say I have a lot of clients who say, oh, I don't like fruit, or I don't like vegetables. I like fruit, I don't like vegetables. Well, do more of one and do, you know, less of the other. Most people, when they say they don't like one thing, it's not that they don't like all of them. They might have a limited selection. So choose what it is that you do like and have it regularly. And try, just do your best. You can, what I usually suggest is try to have them at every meal. So at breakfast, have maybe a fruit. You know, if you're having an omelet, maybe throw a vegetable in there. At lunch and dinner, try to have some vegetables. If you want a snack, have a piece of fruit. Have fruit as a dessert. Like, try to put them all throughout your day and do it consistently, because again, your body loves the consistency. It really will thrive from that. Also note that fresh, frozen, dried, and canned are just fine. So you don't have to do just fresh. A lot of times people think, oh, I have to have fresh. And no, because frozen actually a lot of times is better than the fresh, because they pick it and freeze it right away. So it maintains more nutritional value than that fresh food that's been shipped from, you know, halfway around the world or something like that. The only thing I would watch are the added sugars. So if I'm doing canned, I usually suggest get it packed in juice or get it packed in water and avoid those heavy syrups. You do want to make sure that you're not overdoing the fruit juice. Fruit juice in the body isn't the same as the whole fruit. And I always say choose foods closer to the way nature made them. So choose foods closer to the way nature made them means, can I picture how that food was grown or where it was harvested from? I know where an apple comes from. I know it comes from the tree. I can pick it. Okay, that's a, you know, a great example. If I make a juice, there's not an apple juice tree. I know where it came from, but okay. If I get, you know, some sort of like Apple Jacks, there's no Apple Jacks tree. So always thinking closer to the way nature made it. Same thing with, like, if I'm doing, you know, meats. I might think about, you know, I know where a steak comes from. I don't really know where the hot dog comes from. So you want to think about that. All right. And so speaking of hot dogs, protein, lean protein is really key. So if I am thinking about structuring a meal plan that's going to help me, you know, manage my weight, but also just keep me supported during this stressful time, I want to make sure that I'm going to get good sources of lean protein. So things like fish or shellfish, chicken or turkey without the skin. It could be venison, or it could be lean beef or pork with, like, the, you know, fat trimmed off. Low-fat dairy products like skim or 1% milk, the low-fat yogurt. You could do beans like black beans, lentils, chickpeas. You You do peanut butter or nuts. When we do these kind of proteins, they actually help. Again, we've kind of, you know, talked about this. The last group was, oh, you know, this is going to help with, you know, serotonin production. When we get enough lean protein, we're actually helping to build the neurotransmitters in the brain. So there's a function to it that's important when we're talking about mood and making sure that we manage stress. But we don't want to overdo it, because you'll notice it's 25% protein-rich foods. It's not half the plate. It's not the whole plate. I'm laughing only because I used to teach this class. I used to teach a cardiac rehab class, and mostly men in the class. And we talk about, you know, steak and stuff. And one guy was like, oh, it's got to hang off the plate. No, that's not good. So make sure to bake, broil, or grill and avoid the fried. Air fried is okay. Too many fats, and avoid processed meats. Processed meats would be things like, I just mentioned hot dogs. Could be things like bologna or sausage or Spam or bacon even. These are things that are processed and preserved with nitrates. And nitrates are not good. In fact, we know that they're known carcinogens. They cause cancer. We also know that when things are processed, they're higher in saturated fat, which is not good for the heart, which is, you know, when we get that in excess, that can cause health issues, like my patient with the giant steak. And then also the processed meats also have a lot of sodium. Okay, and let's see how we're doing here. The last part of the plate is carbohydrates. So carbohydrates, when I say carbohydrates, I'm talking about things like whole wheat, rye, or pumpernickel breads. Could be a whole grain cereal, like the Cheerios I mentioned before, or maybe oatmeal. Might be a whole grain cracker, like Triscuits, Wheat Thins. Could be a whole wheat pasta. Brown rice, quinoa, potatoes are on my list. Sweet potatoes, corn, winter squash. These kind of things are what I'm talking about as carbohydrates. So another interesting little fact that I was looking at recently, that, you know, most of America's carbohydrate intake is coming from things like sweets and snack foods. A huge amount, most of it. So I know low carb diets are really popular right now, but people are they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because we need these whole grain, fiber-rich carbohydrates. Fiber is the roughage that's in plants. It's in fruits, it's in vegetables, it's in whole grains. And fiber will help the body in a lot of different ways. One thing it will do will help to stabilize your blood sugar level. That stabilizes the mood. It helps to fuel the serotonin production in the brain. They help to, they also help to support that healthy GI tract, as I was mentioning before. So we don't want to skip carbs, but we want the right type. And we also want to think about portion, because a quarter of the plate is a little different, again, than what we see. We might go to a restaurant, well, not now, but before we might have gone to a restaurant, we might have gone to get it like Italian, that's always my example, and you order spaghetti and they fill the whole entire plate. So we want to think about portion here too. That's one of the reasons I love this plate model, because it just helps us identify the portions right off the bat. Ooh, I love this picture. Include regular physical. Okay, so now we've covered the food, and we want to make sure that we're being active. And I talked a little bit about moving more before, and I also wanted to give you this guideline that there is a recommendation of 150 total minutes of moderate activity weekly. 150 minutes can be broken up however you want it, because like I said earlier, that you don't have to do a certain amount for it to count. So I could take, you know, that, and I could split it up, and I could do, you know, 20 minutes a day. And I could take that 20 minutes and I could do 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at night. So I could do it kind of however I want to. But the key is that we want to do moderate activity, which means that it's with oxygen, aerobic activity. I'm moving the large muscle groups, things like walking, you know, things like I might do an exercise video if I'm stuck indoors. But I want to make sure that I can talk and carry on a conversation. I don't want to get to the point where I'm huffing and puffing and I can't keep it up, because this is something that we want to maintain. We want to keep doing. We want to build on. So in order to do that, I have to stress my body enough, but not too much, that I don't want to do it again. Remember what we tend to do. We tend to be all or nothing creatures who do one thing or another, right? Either we're like not doing anything or we're going out. A lot of the times what happens, people go out to exercise and they do too much and then they feel sore and they feel tired and then they kind of drop it and it goes back and forth like that. So a little bit of time, build up. And the great thing about physical activity, I think you guys probably know, but there's so many different benefits. And I highlighted the ones that I really thought were so important right now. Things like strengthening your immune system, decreasing your risk of different diseases, things like chronic diseases, heart disease, diabetes, high cholesterol, and some types of cancer. Improving your sleep. So that's one thing that tends to go. We'll talk about that in a second. Fighting depression, huge with that one. And helping with weight maintenance. That is actually, physical activity is the biggest thing when they look at, people who maintain their weight. It's the people who maintain an active lifestyle. So finding a way to kind of squeeze it in there. Do not think you have to wait for the gym to open or that you have to do certain things or a certain amount. Stress management. Water. I'm going to drink because I've been talking for 7 o'clock, so an hour. You lose a lot of water when you talk. Okay, so we want to make sure we're adopting a daily stress management routine. And I use an analogy called the water bottle analogy. It goes like this. If I have a water bottle or glass of water, if I hold it up, how heavy is that? Well, it depends on the glass. This one, there's about 20 ounces in there. So 20 ounces. But what if I had to hold that up for a day? How heavy would it feel after that day? What if I had to hold it up for a week? How would my arm feel then? What if I said, you can't put this water down for 9 months, the better part of a year? How do you feel then? And that's the way stress works. That if I am carrying stress, then it's going to weigh on me and it's going to be cumulative. It's going to keep increasing, even though it's the same stress. If I never put it down, if I never give my body a chance to recuperate, to work through it, then it's going to become overwhelming. And that's what happens with a lot of people. They don't take a break until things just feel, overwhelming. So what we want to do, this is preventive, remember, self-care. We want to do a daily stress management routine. We want to do it every single day. That's my advice. But even before you think you need it. When things feel good, that's when you start and that's when you build the habit, okay? So we know that stress can weaken the immune system. We know also it can make it harder to make healthy choices. Again, so much good research at Cornell. This one came out of Cornell too. I can't believe it. But they did this, they looked at people's food choices and they found that there were 2 ways that people made decisions. They made hot decisions and cold decisions. Cold decisions, they said, where people were, thinking rationally, where they could think through the problem and they could make this decision. And they were looking at it explicitly with making food choices. So we're talking about, if you're making this cold decision, you go, you look at the menu or you go grocery shopping, you're, thinking it through and really thinking about what's best for you. The hot decision was when you felt overwhelmed and you got into that situation. And even though you had the best of intentions, that stress, everything just felt so, too much that you just kind of grabbed like whatever's there. And that happens a lot. So we know stress makes it harder. So if we can start to manage it day to day, we can really get a jump on that, because that's honestly, I've seen thousands of people, thousands of clients, and the big thing that I find that derails them is stress and all or nothing thinking. But the 2 go together because it has to do with looking at the mind and how we perceive things. So stress, how do we manage it? Well, You can do things like yoga, meditation. I told you, I love meditation, but you might not be a big fan, but we do use it. Even I work with the schools and we use it with kids, and breathing exercises are really big that help enormously. We know, we found, like I did the research, but there was a study done where they looked at this connection, that there was a connection between the breath and emotion. And they found the part of the brain that connects those two things. And they called it the pranayama pathway and the pranayama neurons. And pranayama, if you guys know yoga, is actually thousands and thousands of years old. It's breathing exercises that are done to help control the breath. When you control the breath, then those emotions are effective, and vice versa. So they can see that connection. So even doing some deep breathing, where you might have heard of things like, one that's super popular is box breath, where I inhale for a certain number of counts, I hold for that same amount of counts, I exhale for the same amount, and then I hold again for the same amount. So you can think of it like that box. So it might be inhale for 4, hold for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts. Inhale 4, hold, exhale 4, hold 4. That's just one. I'm just throwing it out there. Mindfulness. So mindfulness is kind of one aspect of meditation, but I talked about it in regards to eating, that we're fully present and we're really just in the moment. And there's different ways that we can practice mindfulness. We can do it while we, are doing things around the house. I can wash dishes. I can be fully in the moment when I'm washing dishes, or I can go for a walk and I can be completely, in that, and I can really experience my foot touching the ground, and just that, whatever kind of is going on in my head just drops away. And then I could also do things like I could just sit and be mindful. How does this chair feel under me? What does my body feel like? What is the environment like? What am I hearing? What am I smelling? So just pulling in those senses. I also listed some of the self-soothing activities. Some, I said, because binge watching Netflix, though I love it, it is not a way to manage stress, unfortunately. If it was, I'd be super low stress. So things like physical activity, things like getting out in nature, that's one that I absolutely love. Arts and crafts, things like things that really help you put that stress down. That's what we're looking for. We're not looking for distraction here. We're looking for working through and putting the stress down. Journaling works great. Journaling works great, gets that out. And then love. Love works fantastic. I have a pet here. He was meowing just a while ago. You might have heard him. And that's one of my favorites too. All right. So the last practice that we're going to use for preventive self-care is getting enough sleep. Getting enough sleep can be tough. If you're at home all day and you're not moving much, it's going to be very difficult to fall asleep at night. And so all these pieces go together. We need 7 to 9 hours of sleep at night. 7 to 9 hours. And so they find that if you get less than that, then it impacts a lot of things. It impacts your health. It increases things like insulin levels, things like blood pressure, hormones that affect appetite. People eat more when they don't get enough sleep. We know that. So we said this before, consistent bedtime, consistent wake up time, trying to be as structured as you can. But also things like caffeine. Avoid caffeine, even early in the day. If you are caffeine sensitive, and some people are and they don't even realize it, caffeine early in the morning will affect your sleep at night. There was something I read a long time ago that it actually took to get caffeine fully out of the body 3 days. Who knew? A long time. So it can be quite, overstimulating. And speaking of overstimulating, screens. So when we're looking at screens like a computer or a smartphone or a TV, they actually stimulate the pituitary gland. And that gland, the pineal gland, which is about our, day and night kind of circadian rhythm. And they have a type of light called blue light, and that really makes us more alert. So what's great is if you can turn the screens off, turn them off at least an hour. When I would see clients before, I would usually say 2 just to be safe, because it's very hard to get that body relaxed in that relaxed state. And that's what we want. We want to develop a nice calming bedtime routine. So you might find that, oh, I need to turn the screens off. Maybe I need to read. Maybe I need to listen to some music. Maybe I need to change the lighting. You know, and that way you kind of set yourself up for a restful evening. And use the bed, it says mostly for sleeping. Sometimes there's other things, but sleeping is really the key. My husband, I love him, he said, well, do you want to bring your computer in here so you can work? And I said, no, I don't want to bring my computer here and work, because I didn't want that energy of work in the bedroom, because that's my place where I want to relax, right? So we want to keep those things separate. So that can help as well. That's a tough one, sleep. Okay. Okay, so let's just summarize. There are some real reasons that are going on for quarantine weight gain. It's not just eating too much. So that's what I wanted to really drive home, that most people, when I talk to them, they feel like they're just, you know, they're just eating too much and they don't have any willpower. I hear that a lot. And that's not true. There's some real core reasons, physiological reasons. And what we want to do is we want to counter them with some simple changes. So really looking at your mindset, your environment, your daily habits, because what you do day to day, that is going to make the biggest difference. If you have uncomfortable feelings and you're trying to cope and soothe yourself with food, see if you can shift that a little bit to some of these non-food self-soothing techniques. And then also looking at practicing some preventive self-care, as we talked about. And I don't want it to be overwhelming. So the last thing I wanted to say to you guys is, you know, where do you start? Well, what you do is you don't do everything. Don't do everything, please. Really choose what calls to you. And how do you know what calls? Well, I'll tell you how, because we just went through a bunch of stuff. I gave you tons of different things. You're going to remember a couple. There's going to be a couple things that stand out to you. Those are the things to pay attention to, and those are the things you start with. And you start with them and you start small and you build gradually, because the small changes will add up over time. We don't want to overwhelm ourselves or stress ourselves out any more than we already are. So little bits at a time, focus on what you can do, not what you can't. Focus on what you can do, not what you can't. That is something, so I'll tell you, one of the things that I've noticed about this situation that we're in right now is that it's very common to focus on all the things that aren't going right, all the things that we can't do that we want to do. And instead we can flip it. We can flip the script that's in our mind, and we can start focusing on what we can. Because when we focus on what we can, we're going to cultivate a level of gratitude and joy and the things that help us change and help us shift and make positive changes. So that's really key. And my last little tip is be kind to yourself. So change comes from a place of kindness. There's nothing that's going to happen if you're beating yourself up. So always approach it with some kindness. And my last slide is just some resources and my contact info. If you need to get a hold of me, you can email, you can call, though I'm not in the office right now, so email would be a little bit better. So now let's see. Oh, I planned it perfectly. Look at 7:14, 15 minutes, 16 minutes that we've got for questions. If you guys have any questions, I'm going to get right out of there. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to check the chat. Anybody have, okay.
I'd just like to say thank you very much. That was really interesting information. I liked the way that you presented it and just being able to think of things differently. And I think the taking things slowly and thinking about what we can do versus beating ourselves up is a really strong message. So I really appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I see some thanks. Any other questions?
Yeah, hi, this is Deb. One thing that's really helped me sleep is that I got an air purifier for my bedroom, and it's just it's just taking toxins out of the air and circulating the air, which makes it a little easier to breathe. I'm wondering if you could suggest a calorie counter or a calorie tracker. I mean, I've tried one of them, but you put the food in at the end of the day, and halfway through the day you've already blown all your calories. Can you recommend maybe one that you would put food in ahead of time to kind of see,
Yeah, that's a great question. So the one I recommend the most is called MyFitnessPal. MyFitnessPal is free. You can download it as an app on your phone, or you could go online on your computer and use it that way. I like it because a couple things. One is I've often used it as a planning tool for people so that they actually put in what they plan to eat the day before, because you can go right ahead of the day before, put it in, and then you can adjust as you go through your day. Then the other nice thing is that you can scan barcodes and it saves, it's got a nice little memory of your favorites and the things you tend to eat the most. So it becomes so much easier to add all of your meals and foods each day. And you can also do the whole, there's a swipe right where you add a meal to the next day. So it's a really nice, nice tool. So that one is the one I would recommend the most. And somebody I saw in the chat said something about the weather. Yes, the weather can be very depressing. And when people mention the weather, the first thing that pops in my head, if you haven't gotten your vitamin D levels checked, go to your doctor and get your vitamin D levels checked, because vitamin D correlates, when our vitamin D is low, it correlates to seasonal affective disorder, which, we feel depressed with the winter. So you might want to get that checked out. And by the way, since working here, being here for the last, 10 years, I grew up here, but when I was seeing clients, I'd always be shocked at, I never saw one with a normal vitamin D level here, unless they were on a supplement. So look into that maybe. Let's see, what else did I see here? Everything's this pal. Food amnesia, okay. And caffeine, 3 days sleep body. It's been a long time. Okay, great, wonderful. Anything else? Well, thank you guys. I really appreciated everyone taking their time, spending their Thursday evening with me. Olivia had a couple things that she wanted to say before y'all leave, and then I think we're done.
Yes, thank you so much, Julie. That was fantastic. I know personally I've got a few takeaways, a few of those small changes that I plan to think about and start seeing how I can work that into my daily routine. We appreciate everyone joining us tonight. Please save the date for our next speaker series session on Wednesday, April 7th. And that one is going to be titled, Ask Me Why I'm Pumped. This session will dive into how heat pumps are an attractive alternative for both your heating and cooling needs. Remember to visit our website at putknowledgetowork.org for more information, and you'll be able to register for that upcoming session as well. Thank you all very much, and thank you so much, Julie, for sharing all of this fantastic information with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Julie. We enjoyed the presentation. You did a great job. We've got a lot of takeaways in terms of just little opportunities or nuggets that we can use to, I guess, slow down the amount of what we eat and what we can do. So thank you so much and have a great evening.
Good. Take care. Bye-bye.